Okie dokie. Okay, so we got it back. Okay. So let's see. So your printing work. Hold on. I kind of need to get. Let me pause that real quick. Okay. So I think one thing with this is let's kind of thinking about just because I've done RE2 today, so my brain's a little bit fried.
Yeah.
So let's kind of make a game plan before, because otherwise I'm just gonna pause and stuff. Okay. So I think one thing that there's kind of different ways people have been. I've been kind of leading people is like some people are very concerned about access. They're very concerned about the way maybe you're supposed to behave in that space. Some people have been really more inclined to talk about the resources that they found and that affect when you think of that place, what kind of words come to your mind, or what do you kind of associate with that place?
It's in the basement. I also find it weird that it's a combo fine art library. That there's no fine art library in the fine arts building, but that's that's neither here nor there, because it's actually helpful to have all of those different kinds of resources together, because art and music and all that stuff is like way more interconnected than people would give it credit for. You know what I mean? Or like the possibilities for making it all work together are, I mean, the research is there, you can find it. I mean, I picked up a whole bunch of books about, making little synthesizer circuits the other day. Like a lot of them. Would it be helpful to see those?
I think okay, so I think one thing I'm getting from you is that you really like to look at sources of information to learn. So let's like talk about that first. Let's kind of maybe you could talk about some instances where you figured out a problem based on resources, or actually just gathering a lot of resources and how that helped you figure something bigger out with your practice or with your work.
I was researching for an art history class I was taking with Allison Fields, and it was about tourism and the West, and I picked the See America First books to write about because I was interested in like the mediated experience and how is the book gonna tell you what's gonna happen when you go on the same trip, or is it just a record of what happened to this person? Like, does it set up the expectation, or does it, is it just a story? But then like in, finding those books and realizing that there was a bunch in the Western history collection that they don't let you take out. I remembered that there was the H.C. Westerman series called See America First too, and it made me approach that research in a completely different direction, because that series of prints has like literally nothing to do about that book, but it's about experience, and it's about finding new places and finding new things, and
okay, so that definitely, there's a lot of connections what you just talked about to what I see in your work. So maybe talk about expectation and your practice and creating environments.
Well, I mean, we were just down in the storm shelter, and that's a drab gray box that'll, it's functional, at times, but is it a great experience to be down there? No. So that's kind of why I'm implementing all of like the nice, like classy pattern work, and the disorienting color is because it's a disorienting thing when you have to go down there, but
And I think, how do you find your patterns, or how do you kind of decide on patterns?
I mean, houndstooth is like, it's like a classy fashion thing. It's fun to take that away from like, well, I mean, everyone can afford something with a houndstooth print on it, but I mean, it seems fancy to me, so it's like, why not borrow it to help further a kind of like super drab and even scary experience, like make it a little bit more palatable, make something that you don't really appreciate into something that has the markers that tell us to appreciate stuff, if that makes sense.
I think that makes a lot of sense, because I definitely think of patterns as archives of culture, like cultural archives, because for something to be, like in storytelling, there's repetition a lot to enforce a point, and pattern is a lot about repetition.
Yeah.
But it also is such it tells a lot about a culture. So you want to maybe talk about what attracts you to patterns and placing patterns in environments?
It's probably a byproduct of Philadelphia graffiti culture. I mean, that's like I could like come up with a better explanation, but that's probably the best explanation. All the scripts are really basically based on repetition and doing it the right way, and making the connections happen properly. And apart from being abstracted letter forms, they just kind of happen as pattern a lot of the time. Easy kind of roundabout mark making can become concentric circles within a letter, or a heart at the end of a letter. So yeah, that kind of additive process, and the fact that it's like, unless you know what you're looking at, you're not going to know that that's an A and that's a B and that's a C and whatever. It functions as like patterns, like a lot like a tree, you know what I mean, and casting a shadow. It seems very random, but there's rules and order, I guess.
No, definitely. And I think one thing too is, well, definitely with graffiti, so that when you have graffiti or a tag, a blank wall can become a specific space, because it has that piece of graffiti. And so how do you feel about mark making and pattern, and making that into a by using pattern and by using making anything into a place, like a kind of get what I'm shooting at now?
Yeah, I mean, even so, we'll just keep the same thread going. The buff mark is like, it's still there. It just turned into a block of white or whatever bucket paint they had to like go over what went on the wall. So it's patterns evolve upon themselves, and they change. Sometimes they change abruptly, and a lot like that, but
yeah. And I think so. One thing that's kind of noted a lot in libraries, specifically library science, is there was a guy who kind of coined the phrase like the library is a growing organism. And a library is, we think of libraries as collections, not necessarily curation.
Right.
But do you see any, and I'm going to put you on the spot for this question, but do you see any connections between growing organisms, like libraries, like library collections, and patterns, like what you were just saying, that grow organically because of culture? Like what connections do you see there? Whether it be like, say, something about us as societies, or human nature.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's always like, whoever is in charge of aggregating all that stuff will have their hand in it, you know. If they want one book over another one, not because like they're like, oh, I hate that book, like they find the one author's interpretation more useful than the other ones, like yeah, that's it's organic, but it's also man-made, I guess. Like the actual stacks and physical space appear kind of organic, but there's, you know, people there making sure it all runs properly. I kind of lost the thread on that one.
No, I definitely get what you're saying. Is it's funny that, yeah, I like that you kind of question the use of organic, because there's very much a man-made order to it.
Yeah, it's like a juried show that you apply to, and you know, that show will look differently depending on who picks the work for it and how they feel that day. You know, do library collections suffer from the same thing? Like when the opportunity to order more books, or like, you know, I'm not sure how that process even works. Like if like 50 people come in and say, oh, like, where's this book? Like, does it get on order? I'm sure that's, well, neither here nor there.
No, actually, it's a really interesting way to think about, like, you know, you find that book in the library that's just, you know, I've happened to me many times where I actually am the first person to check this book out, and it's really out there.
That's also something that I've noticed, like that back, like that card that's in the front of a lot of books, like, you know, the things that I do take out, yeah, most of them have been there for a while, like, let's just say that much. Sometimes like longer. I think some of those See America First books hadn't been taken out in like 20 years. So.
Yeah, and I actually think that, you know, the card itself becomes an interesting like record and a pattern. And so I think let's jump into pattern as record. Because for you, maybe talk about your process, because I think about this a lot with like weaving or like knot-based thing where it's actually showing the time in the pattern. But with printing, how do you see that? Because it does kind of, whenever you, it's kind of happening. I don't know, you talk about it, you're the maker.
It's like, you have to stop after a while. This is about density more than anything else. It's about like density and opacity of color. It's about density and opacity of line. But yeah, if you just keep going and going and going, eventually it's no longer a pattern and it's just black, you know? So yeah, knowing when to stop is, I guess, the most important organic process in that growing organic pattern. I mean, nature does it a different way. It just keeps going until something makes it stop. But
I think that that's a good, we can, you know, you can draw some connections between pattern and curation and selection. I think, do you want to talk about the power associated with selection?
Oh yeah. That's like all of the recent screen prints I've been doing. It's just like kind of all about that. You know, because all the source material is like fairly famous works of art, but you know, when I select the light rays and the stone kind of cloth texture from the Ecstasy of St. Teresa and don't show you anything else of it, they just become like neat light rays and texture, and there's no rest of the story there, and it's just, you know, it's just a pattern and a density at that point. It doesn't have the read of the history or the mythology. It's just a mark.
So how do you feel about that in terms of, like, in archival terms, selection is hugely associated with power, and so how do you feel that records can erase but also preserve the tension with that?
Well, like, I guess a lot of museums have like this, you know, I guess a museum and a library are kind of the same. You know, you can't take a painting off the wall and take it home, but you know, you can take the experience home. but yeah, they have catalogs of their whole back collection, and all these institutions just have basements full of like millions of dollars of artwork that, you know, is seldom, if ever, seen. And then, you know, if it is one of those institutions that's like a little bit deeper on the research end, like, yeah, like they'll drag stuff out for you that no one else has seen in a while. And yeah, we were just talking about books that haven't got taken out in a while. It's like, you know, does it even exist if no one's reading it? Yeah. That's a little, like, heady in art school, but I think you know what I'm talking about.
No, for sure. And I think that's, I mean, we're getting close to time, but should cough quick.
You all right?
It's just because I've had.
You need some water?
No, I'm fine. I think, I mean, we hit on a lot of really good things. Is there anything else that's kind of just like running in your mind right now? Or do you have a question for me? Because one thing. Okay, I do have one thing I want to ask you. Okay, so this show is about letting the artists have a lot more control and selection. So, what do you think about social dynamics and social structure influencing selection processes?
Well, I guess we started with like social dynamics. You know, actually asking someone, you know, what that call number is, or like, hey, show me where that shelf is, because like even when they tell me where it is, I typically will not find it on my first attempt to like find that stack. But yeah, a lot of people just sit there and they go on their laptop, or they read the textbook that they had to buy from.
I used up all the memory on your phone.
Oh.
But it's okay.
That's
okay.
You
can still talk on this.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I see a lot. Like whenever I'm in any of the libraries on campus, is just like people sitting there on their laptop, or with like, you know, because I used to work at the university bookstore. Like I recognize those textbooks. Like it's not a book that you got out of the library. It's a book that you paid $250 for, and like, are you using the library as like a serene space, or are you using it as a repository of information? Both are valid. I mean, like, I don't think it would function as a good repository of information if there weren't the old social cues to tell you to not yell or like have your headphones on really loud.
Or I think social cue is a good word, because there's also a lot of things associated with like, this is a time for quiet reflection, and museums have the same social cues as well. Do you see problems with that? Do you see like is there like glaring things there that kind of make you uncomfortable?
Not really. I kind of like it, but I feel weird when I get like a text message when I'm in a museum or a library. Like, do I check it now? Do I wait until I go outside? Like, I mean, the ultimate exaggeration of this is like, is it like church? Like, you definitely don't check your phone when you're in church, but yeah, is a library the same? Is a museum the same?
Are they sacred
spaces?
Yeah, I think that's something, and I've been asking this question, is so we're definitely seeing a lot of shifts in the way we can access information with really, really complex browsers like Google, and databases just getting larger and larger and larger. But how is that affecting your work or your practice in any way?
I like to deal with that stuff. I like to deal with how those external technologies are like greatly affecting the way we communicate and the way we find information and the speed of all that stuff. I mean, there was a whole series of lithos I did last year that was all specific phrases I would type into Google, but I would find all the images that weren't the nouns and the verbs, and I would use those as the subject matter for the Photoshop collage prints.
It's really awesome.
So yeah, that stuff's totally of interest to me.
Well, just in
Because
regards
it's like,
to-
at the base level, right? Reading stuff off the screen, I don't digest it. Like, finding a call number, okay, like I can get that much. But if I'm trying to read an entire book or something like that, like, there's been more than a few books that I've downloaded the PDF from the library database, and I can't read it off the screen, and I wind up I don't spend any money on Xeroxes, but I wind up having to make 400 Xeroxes to get this book when I don't know, does that save them money in the long run to have it instead of like 2 or 3 physical copies?
They still have to pay for the databases.
Really?
Oh yeah. They
Oh,
just
that's
are
crazy.
really expensive. It's digital does not mean cheap. Not at all. And so I definitely know exactly where you're coming from, because I still print almost all my articles. But I think, I don't want to get too far. I just want to make this too long because I have to transcribe it. I think we'll end there, because I think we're going to start getting into something where it'll be hard to cap it.
Yeah.
But do you have those lithos here?